And New York Yankees great. The pitcher, former pitcher, CC Sabathia,
who is just a great guy. Just like Chris, I got to know him when I was writing for ESPN New York. .com and really got to know him. He's a huge sports fan. I think he's got 500 pair of Jordans. You know what I mean? Like something like some crazy collection. But
no wonder you guys hit it off.
Yeah, but a thoughtful guy. You know what I mean? I just wanted to get that in. He really is.
He is releasing his autobiography, and it is entitled "Till the End," and an excerpt of it was released to The Undefeated, and he had a lot of interesting things to say about the racial makeup of Major League Baseball now, which is down to about a little below 8% African American. And here he is talking about it. Rob G, you're going to read the excerpt.
That's right. He said, baseball is boring too much of the time. The game needs to change, and I don't mean using more data to shift guys on the infield. I'm talking about the way people say, oh, he played the game the right way, when what they mean is he played the game the white way. What they mean is they don't like the flair that black and Hispanic guys bring to the field. You can play baseball a long time, have a lot of fun, and make a lot of money, but right now, this sport is not for us, and we know that. If the game doesn't change, it's going to be in trouble, and not just with black people.
That's some
funny
strong
because
stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's real good stuff. It's funny because the best team going or the most exciting team going is what team right now?
San Diego.
San Diego. What do they do? Do you see what they do in that dugout? They
have fun.
They're having fun. No, there's no doubt. And what he's talking about is that, and there's always been that. Latin players have always been criticized, Hispanic, Latin, Chris, for their flair, right? You remember the bat flip, some of the other stuff.
Right.
They were mad that they were mad at
Rob,
okay.
Before we go on quickly, I don't know if you were like this. But when I was growing up, I was a young kid, you know I lived in Cincinnati. Obviously, the Cincinnati Reds were huge, and we used to go to games. I considered, like, Dave Concepcion and Tony Perez, I considered them black. I know they weren't. They're Latino, but at that time, I considered them black. Now, I know in the official demographics, they probably were considered Latino players.
Right.
But I thought of them as black. Did you when you were a kid?
I didn't. Okay. No, because I just think it's a cultural thing. It's not just the color of your skin. It's the food you eat, what you believe in. Do you know what I mean? It's more than just that. I think people can lump everybody together and just go by skin color, but that doesn't.
You don't consider Akeem Olajuwon black, right?
Why don't I think he's black? He's not black American, but he's black.
Okay. Because they're of African descent. Dave Concepcion, Tony Perez.
Right, but they don't, but I'm saying.
That's what I consider black. I get it. African American is different than African, Afro-Caribbean,
right?
Whatever. But
that's all I'm saying. Right, yeah, right. I'm not saying that they have black skin, but their beliefs and what they eat and you know what I mean and what they celebrate.
It's a different culture. Yeah,
it's just right. It's a different culture. Yeah. That's really what it is. But my point is, the Padre, like the whole idea of black players. I remember when people criticized Ken Griffey Jr. because he wore his hat backwards. I thought when they did a bust, or they should have put on Ken Griffey Jr. with a hat on, Chris, backwards. You know what I mean?
Like I really
did. Yes, I really did because he was known for that. Do you know what I mean? And they were playing, turn your hat around, do this. Where's your show your stirrups? You know, like the old crotchety guys who were still a part of the old guard. And things have changed. I looked the other day and I saw Tatis hit a monster home run, his 27th home run. And the way he went around the bases and the handshakes he did to everybody going into the dugout. And when he got there, you see that big chain they put on all the players?
Yeah,
Chris, I mean, it's a big Padres gold chain that spins around.
Like Eric B. and Rakim are
Am I right?
from the late 80s or something.
And the crowd is going bonkers.
Flav, yeah.
Right.
Yes,
but the crowd is going bonkers. what CC's saying is we need more of that. Let people be who they are. Stop trying to button up everything. It's a game. My God. Everybody doesn't have to respond and act the same. We come with different things. Don't we all bring different things to the party, Chris?
No, I totally agree. And let's keep it real. Obviously, there's a racial element to this, which I don't want to minimize. But Bryce Harper's has said the same thing.
Right.
No he
doubt.
Said, we got to make this fun. And what happens, Rob, and 100%, you know this because 100%. You and I are on these. I mean, heck, we have a national radio show, but we also have been on the TV debate shows for nearly 20 years now. We were on Cold Pizza debating with Skip Bayless. Okay. And early on, I think the first time I was on there was probably 2005-ish.
Right.
As far as on first intent, on the debate aspect.
Right.
I was on the
before we moved
the other stuff
before we moved to the other show, right?
Yeah,
before we moved to First Take, right.
But we used to talk baseball. And the thought of, I remember once being on First Take, and it was the baseball playoffs. And we were hardly talking any baseball. This was, years later. And we were talking, it was week 4, week 5 of the NFL. And it was all NFL and maybe a little NBA. And I was like, what? We're treating baseball like hockey. You know what I'm saying? Baseball needs to be talked about, but it wasn't moving the needle, and everything showed that when you started talking about it, people tuned out. And I think a lot of the storylines, Rob, that we talk about in the NBA and the NFL, a lot of them are personality driven. I'm not going to deny that we also obviously talk X's and O's to some degree and strategy and things like that. But a lot of them are personality driven. And I think baseball, you need to let these guys let their personalities show, right? Whatever their comments, however they want to dress, however they want to, act on the field. I mean, obviously within reason, but whatever they bring, like who's the guy that's taking the selfies when he hits a home run, and things like that. Like, let that stuff come out, and I think you'll capture people's imaginations again, or at least the casual fans' imagination again. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I get it. It is personalities, and that's what you need to drive home. And there are plenty of guys, and you go through ebbs and flows. There were a lot of great players in Bonds and McGuire and what they were doing. And, it was, you remember, Chris, because you covered it for the New York Times. I mean, you went all over the country during that.
Home run, right.
Home run derby. ESPN cut in for every one of their at-bats. If you were watching ESPN, you could have been watching anything, Chris. And it would be like, Mark McGuire's taking his second at-bat at Busch Stadium, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they would show it. And there was a whole buzz there, and Bonds, we covered that, and everybody was there, and a lot of people, became famous off of covering Barry Bonds and his quest and stuff like that. So the personalities there has to be there. And then, a ton of great players have retired, and you have a new wave that's now starting. You're starting to see some new players who are fun to watch.
Young players.
They do.
Obviously,
it's
you
coming.
got Ohtani. Yeah, that's ridiculous what he's
You
doing.
see
But
it,
then
right.
Tatis, Mookie Betts.
There's a number of players, right?
Yes,
who are coming, and the more we get to know about them and what they're doing, and get to see them on a different from a different perspective. And the only thing I think, and we're different, as we always talk about, because people, I run into people all the time who say, man, I can't watch this show or listen to that show because they talk about the same 4 or 5 topics every day, and I just can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? And there's other stuff going on. And I think we've stayed away from that. I know we made a conscious effort that we're not going to talk about certain things just because, and we're going to talk about what's happening and the stories. And we're not afraid to talk about Trevor Bauer, Chris, right? It's a big story. That's something that we need to focus in on. Or Ohtani. We've talked about, how many times we talked about Ohtani this year? A number of times. Because it's right.
It's a big story. This is huge.
It's a huge story we haven't seen in 100 years.
This is like a guy, Rob, being an awesome quarterback and an awesome linebacker at the same time.
Playing
you
two,
know,
right.
I mean, really.
Right, exactly.
It's like if Ray Lewis was freaking Tom Brady at quarterback.
And where would we be with that story if there was a guy doing that in the NFL? It would be the end of the world. Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So,
and let me say this, Rob, because CC, let's look at quickly at the numbers. The height of African American participation in Major League Baseball was in, I'm surprised it wasn't higher than this, but it was 1981 and the league was 18.7% Black American.
You got to remember, we only make up 12 or 13% of the population. So I think people, because you know what the other thing too, Chris, is what happened is that back then, the only way you were on a team is you had to be a star player. So you saw all the stars.
A lot of the stars were black. Yes.
No, that's what I'm saying. So when you looked, you were like, the league is black.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
well,
because
among African Americans, I mean, yes, obviously basketball and football are incredibly popular among African Americans. But when we were kids, baseball was right there. There was a point where baseball was arguably the sport of choice for African Americans before we were kids. But still, you know what I'm saying? From the Negro Leagues.
You also got to remember, right, and because of the Jackie Robinson, Chris, and I mean, most black people in this country were Brooklyn Dodger fans, no matter where they lived, right?
Right.
Because Jackie Robinson, it was so monumental to people that they were like, oh, no, I'm a Brooklyn Dodger fan. And when Jackie came to these cities, black people paid double and triple the price, Chris, to get in. That's what the owners did to try to keep the black fans out of the stadium.
Right.
They did it in Detroit.
Well,
they didn't want them
so in 81, it was 18.7% African American. It was 11% Latino. And now it is, these are from the 2016, it was 6.7%. Now I think it's up to close to 8% African American.
It had a tick up.
And
this past year.
It was 27% Hispanic in 2016. I think it's closer to 30% now.
And you know what? The population in the United States back in 1981, Chris, we were the number one minority in the United States.
Right. And now it's the Hispanics. But I'm going to say this, though, Rob, because there's been a lot of hand-wringing about getting more blacks in baseball and why aren't blacks playing baseball and all that. For now, well over a decade, closing in on 2 decades. And my thing is this. If African Americans either don't want to play baseball or aren't good enough to make it to the majors, then so be it. Like, I'm not looking at this like we got to get more blacks in baseball. If we want to be in baseball and we're being held out for because of discrimination or they're not providing opportunities or whatever, then yes, we got to fix that. But if we don't want to play it or if we're not good enough, then it is what it is. You know, nobody's saying we got to get more blacks in hockey. We don't want to play hockey for the most part. Right. You know, so that's all I'm saying.
Unless you're from Canada, right?
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
There's a handful of guys, right?
Yeah, I do think I do think clearly. I mean, we're good enough because you can look at the stars now and the stars of yesteryear. So, but I do think there's a real, and I think this is what the players are getting at. Rob, Ken Griffey Jr. talked about it. And there are, I think, other things, too. You've talked about, them going to Latin America.
Right. Well, that's where they set up all the – exactly.
Right.
If you set up a training facility, Chris, it's the old saying, you reap what you sow, right? So if I'm planting seeds in Latin America and I have baseball academies, I got a good shot that those players are going to come from there, right? They play ball all day. And they live in the bunks, in the barracks.
It's there. Yes, it's what they do. But I do think that a lot of African Americans just aren't into baseball anymore. Not all, of course. I got friends whose kids are really good players playing in college and things like that. But overall, I don't think many African Americans are into it. I live in a very integrated suburb, and I can go right down the street and there are basketball courts, and they are full of black kids. And then right across the street, you can see it. Right across the street, there are baseball fields, and they got the baseball league, and it's virtually all white.
Yeah, it's a tough thing because more kids play organized than ever before. There's not the sandlot like I played as a kid, where you got the kids in the neighborhood and you went and played baseball. It's just that everything is organized, and we talked with people before about the showcases, Chris, and you got to pay $1,000 for the weekend in order to be in the showcase. Right. And we saw the Michigan baseball coach who decided he wasn't going to go that route. You remember he had 8 players on the national championship playing for Michigan. He probably had as many black players playing on his baseball team as Michigan had on their basketball team, which is unheard of. If you think about, Michigan basketball, Chris, what, they have 8 or 9 black players on their roster?
They had a lot of white guys on their team. Yep.
So that's what I'm saying. It was about the same number, which is unheard of.